You are listening to the Firecracker Podcast with Tony Rico.
Okay, so because every now and then there's a couple, remember we have 6 people that will listen in every now and then, so, you know, and I like to cover things, I like to think we have a helpful hand, and whether we're comfortable or not with our abnormalities, we still have things to offer. So we're using this in my office as first base, second base, third base. We're talking about first and third situations, base running in first and third. You described a situation where the kid coming from home goes past first base.
Yeah, this is a ball 4 situation.
Right.
So instead of just going to first, and this is
second baseman's a little inside the baseline.
And this comes from watching the Bandits, Chicago Bandits, who do a really
This
good.
is their thing.
Considering they have kids from like 8 or 9 different states, and be able to implement this, I don't even know how they get together.
With them, right?
How they get together for practices, but that's for another time.
Sure.
So anyway, she goes all the way out to the grass.
So she doesn't stop at first base, she continues past all the way to the ground, which is a really deep cut.
Right, and so then she just takes this angle right here. Obviously, this kid is out of it. She's too shallow.
Right.
So she can either back up here, but you don't know how fast this girl is. Are we going to, I'm trying to remember, they go at, I guess, a medium speed, kind of a jog.
Right.
So the throw goes from the pitcher. The pitcher's going to look at this girl, runner on third, that's her priority, but she'll probably end up throwing the ball, let's say, to the shortstop, okay? The shortstop has got to be trying to look this girl back, and they take an 84-foot throw and make that into, I don't know how far that is.
100, 115, right? They're drawing the shortstop back as that shortstop chases that runner coming around first.
So this girl,
getting farther away from home.
This girl can either, you know, how do you like to have your girl on third? She goes a little bit quicker, a
little shuffle.
while watching this girl. As soon as this girl, when do you have your girl on third go? Right when she commits to this runner? Usually, or what?
When she starts to run at her?
Yeah, right when she could, because that's
as soon as she picks up speed.
Yeah, because she's
got to stop.
She's got to stop and turn all the way around and then make a throw to the plate.
Yeah, so you got like about after this far, probably a 40-foot compared to 100 feet.
And at this point, Rob, if you've got that, you're coaching third and that shortstop starting to, let's say, chase your runner, what is your runner at third going? She's shuffling, she's about a third off?
As the shortstop's going towards that runner away from where she's at, she's going down as far as that kid's moving towards.
And so really what this does is, and I've mentioned this over and over, is I used to believe that you could really expose defenses and win games with base running, especially at 12 and under, 14 and under. Rob's shown us that very few 18 and under teams, you know, kids have been playing a long time, coaches have been coaching a long time, but are really prepared to defense the first and third. So what we're describing to people right now is a little bit deeper angle on the base runner's part that you've seen with the Chicago Bandits team, but really what the first and third situation does is it exposes your system, if you have one, so the types of plays that you have defensively, and it exposes the strength of your shortstop's arm. You know, in order to be able to stop and plant and throw home. Now, if you look at all the athletes on the field, a lot of times the shortstop might be the most likely, but boy, you'll know right away. I mean, rarely does the second baseman have a stronger arm than the shortstop. I don't know how often that's happened, but if it does, that might be a way to reverse coverage, but your shortstops get exposed very, very fast. I know another philosophy would be to try to engage in a pickle that runner in first and third, between first and second, and get the ball in the first baseman's hand, because often they don't have a good arm, and then they're chasing the runner towards second base. They have to stop and plant the other way, especially if it's a left-hander, and it kind of happens that way. But to me, what advice could we give now, say if we're talking to coaches, what advice could we give to coaches on how to defend your first and third situations a little bit better? What are the key to being sound defensively, first and third? What are you looking to do when you're defensing these?
Well, first of all, what my defense is predicated on the location of the pitcher you're going to call. In other words, if you have an inside pitch to a lefty, that's going to change the defense you use compared to an outside pitch. Or the same thing with the righty. Rob and Steve Harrington are two of the best I've ever seen as far as, you know, making you make decisions during during the heat of a play and
Exposing the
constantly,
defense.
yeah, exposing it, it really makes it tough to defend. And most of the times, there are very few colleges that I see even work this right.
I feel the key defensively, in a very general sense, is your shortstop. Your
Yeah.
shortstop is the one that enables or disables that third base coach and what he's doing, and so what you were mentioning about how the Bandits can have such, how they can be cohesive. I could, imagine they have to practice, that, and getting base runners to really be on the same page with the coach and understand the situation. So you have to rehearse it, because I think that's part of it too, is not enough people rehearse. And then typically in first and third practice situations, I've seen too many teams, when they engage first and third practice, they allow all the variables to happen, and then it becomes all over the place, and then the coach is getting angry, and then, no, what about this? And it turns in, and a lot of times first and third defensive practice can turn into this big debacle of like, what the heck? And it's just infuriating the coach. And really, I think if you practice and control the practice and go through different scenarios and run through them, and go start at a slower speed and then let everything speed up, and then to the point to where you're just competing defense versus offense.
I like
And
that.
now what you're doing is you're training all of those things that you've done in a slow motion, but now they're reactions, because they're people getting very creative, and a lot of times to throw off your instinct. You have an instinct to this, so you may hear something and you do something. You may see something and you do something.
Right.
We had a coach in our organization named Bill Smith, and he was a great coach. It goes back to the 90s. And he had I'm sure you guys have seen it, but we were jogging to second base, the first and third, and it was
the coach of the CERN.
Okay, I remember Bill Smith from.
really could teach the
He's
sneak
very
run as good as anyone, and so he had this play that was all on timing, where the catcher would kind of nonchalantly, kind of like that pickoff that looks like it's going to the pitcher, but it goes to second base.
Right.
And he got us once, man. He threw the ball back to the pitcher, but it was a time play where she just got it and turned around, and our kid was still jogging to second base, but our kid wasn't ready for what he had, and that ball got to second base, and that shortstop just tagged our kid out. Like, she could not change direction because she didn't see it coming. And it was interesting because he deceived us on what we thought we were going to see, and he tricked the runner on her jogging speed, because you'll get that a lot of times, just kind of jogging to second base. And I really hadn't seen that too many times. So first and third situation, I mean, when you're working it defensively, how do you break things down, or how do you keep it from or does it get a little heated and ugly?
Well, first and third, I always like to get the ball in our shortstop's hand, because our shortstop's usually the most athletic kid. And just have her read what the runner does. The biggest thing is just making sure that the runner from third doesn't score. So
Right.
that's her priority, and if that means the runner gets to second base safely, and we keep the runner in third, then we've done our job.
If that runner at third can shuffle and get off to, let's say, past a fourth of the base, but a third of the baseline, not quite halfway, then on anything, that's a shorter run. That's a 40-foot run for her. So I didn't know if this was going to translate initially or not coming over from baseball, but it's always worked with our catchers. Our catchers, when we throw back the ball either to second base or the pitcher where we're throwing it, they're always going to check that runner at third. It's just part of their catch. And check that runner at third, because if they don't check at all, because we'll do this as base runners, is if that catcher's not checking this at all, well, man, you can get some big shuffles down there. And hey, 10 foot on a stride, 8 foot on a stride is really making it that much harder for someone to play bang, bang, catch at home. And a lot of times it's that slide just under the catcher's tag that makes it. So a catcher that can check under control, because then if she's extended, she reads the pick.
I'd had a couple kids in practice when we had a catcher do that. I'd have this kid here lay down on the ground, and she still wouldn't even notice her, just kept throwing the ball down.
Yeah. We'll decoy in practice, do all types of things from third base to try to distract the catcher, to try to get her to hesitate or anything, because she's got to read all these, this decoy behavior that's designed to distract you, but you still have to systematically know your checks and then just where you're playing catch. And,
One thing too on rundowns, I think that should be stressed, is so often you see people when they run down, there's a reason why they call it a rundown. A lot of people think it's a walk down, or they just kind of go at the same speed of the runner and don't create any pressure on them.
Don't allow the runner to dictate the pace of what's happening.
Yeah.
You run hard under control so you can still stop and plant and throw, but do not allow a runner to stand there with her shoulders facing the field so she can change direction and go whatever. You got to get her shoulders turned and dictate. You're either going back to the base or I'm going to tag you. So I definitely agree with that.
let me just show you ask you one other scenario
Sure.
too that we were working on this weekend. Is this is the runner, not the water, right?
The waters are the runners, and the, we don't have fancy
Okay,
digital boards
okay,
right here, so
okay.
these are the two runners right here.
Okay, where's your shortstop? Shortstop's right here, okay.
Do you need your second baseman?
Second baseman, I do need the second baseman, okay? So what happens here?
You want a shortstop runner, or do you want a tall man?
A tall,
Actually, it
this
should be
is,
the other way, this is the tallest
this is a
shortstop.
slapper, so she's skinny, okay?
That's a catcher.
There we go.
Okay, that's a,
Wait, squatty catcher, there you go, alright.
okay, you took away my fast slapper. Okay, runner on third base, nobody on any other base. So this girl slaps the ball to the shortstop, okay? She's looking this girl back, looking her. In the meantime, this girl runs through the safe and does the same thing. She goes all the way to the end and comes this way. You're changing the variable now because you got, with a lefty slapper up, you've got the shortstop standing right here. So second baseman has got to cover first on that, right? So then, who's going to cover her on this angle? There's nobody here, and you just got her in the first baseman. So again, you're in a coverage situation when that happens. So basically, automatically, you can take second base most of the time, or if she does commit to that, you got the same thing of her being able to get home.
Yeah, and you talked earlier about depending on pitching inside or outside, righty or lefty, because a lot of reverse defenses nowadays. Did you see a lot of those 20 years ago? Flipping and keeping the shortstop home. Did you see a lot of reverse coverages?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah? It's kind of automatic with the lefties.
Yeah.
Well, we saw that, but what with the main, we don't see as many of the defenses that we do now, I think. Like you throw inside on the lefty, you want to be able to have somebody over on this side, right?
Right.
Um,
Now, when we were talking earlier about the base runner taking a real deep angle, going all the way to the grass and coming back, and then those gaining experience will say she's out of the baseline, or so.
we establish your own baseline.
Establish your own.
But then again, correct me if I'm wrong, you have to go back, if you do run this girl back, she has to go back the same exact way, doesn't she?
She establishes her base path.
You know, once she established it going there, then it's.
So can she go back to first that way, or you're saying she's got to go
I
back?
think she has to go back this way.
I don't think so.
No, because once the defense gets the ball, then that starts the path.
Okay.
That changes her path.
I was wondering
I think
this.
so too.
Okay, here's something now. It's more of a feel
Can I have my
alignment.
base runner so I can drink that?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Wait, was that? Wait,
You want
I
your
opened that
base
one.
runner
That
back?
one's yours.
Okay.
There you go.
I'm putting the base runner on.
The running lane.
Mm-hmm.
Is it in fair or foul territory?
But running.
It's first base. Sorry, from home to first.
Oh, it's in foul.
Foul territory, yeah.
And so when a base runner go running to first base, gets hit by a throw from the catcher inside that baseline, she's out, right?
No, she's in foul.
She's in
No,
foul
in fair territory. When she's
In
running,
fair territory?
because the natural line.
Why
So
are
here's
we
my
gonna
point.
say,
The running lane is in foul territory. The natural running lane of even right-handed batters is in fair territory until about,
It's half.
for right-handers,
30 feet.
not even.
30 feet.
It's yeah. But when do I'm saying in all the games we watch, all the runners that we see going to first base, we do not see runners naturally going into the running lane
She were
to
3
first
feet
base.
before they
They
did
are
that.
hitting. They're hitting that running lane maybe 5 feet, 10 feet at the most for a right hand.
Yes.
But no, it's really pretty close to the base.
Yes.
And so why is that? It's very interesting to me because it's not a natural path, and yet within the rules, definitely. I mean, you hit that kid in the back, and she's established. Yeah, but she's established a lane that doesn't matter. But to me, that's always a little bit off. It's like look at the lefties. The lefties when they're using the front of the box, and it's actually a shorter path to first base. You look at the bases as a square. So when these lefties are nowadays using the front of the box and coming that inside angle, it looks like they're taking a really wide turn. But if you take string, they're actually shortening the path to first base, right? So they have to curve, and they're not crossing the running lane until just as they hit the base. And so it's an interesting concept because do you remember when Oklahoma was playing Alabama? The first year they played in Alabama won, and Destiny Martinez used to play for the Angels. dropped a beautiful bunt, and the first baseman knew that she could not get the ball. Like, it was a beautiful bunt. And I don't know if it was Caleb Brown, I don't know if she played first base or not, but it was Alabama first baseman. And Destiny was running inside the line because of her natural pass. She dropped the bunt running, and the first baseman went boom! And knocked Destiny Martinez on her rear end. I mean, her legs had flipped up in the air, and she would have been safe. Chamberlain comes up and hits a home run next that would have tied the game. And so Chamberlain, I think, ended up hitting a home run, and they ended up losing by 1. So umpire, was runner's interference, and it was a beautiful strategical play on the Alabama first baseman's part. I mean, we saw Pat Murphy the next day in Hemet. He came out, he made that trip it's interesting to see him there, and I had to talk to him about it. He goes, that's a play that she had done one other time early, and he said, you're going to win a big game like that for us someday. Because you think about it, that's not a bad, it would look kind of iffy to teach, but, park your first baseman in close and create a little contact. I mean, there's got to be any type of ball on the first baseline, but man, what a unique heads. The only time I've seen it, a first baseman heads up enough to kind of create that contact, and then boom, Chamberlain hits their home run, still lost by 1, and Alabama went on to win the national championship.
Remember those plays that you used to do years ago where you have a runner at third base and you act like it was a bluff, like a missed squeeze, and you even did this with Mallory. Mallory was no gazelle, but
Didn't the kid almost fall down or something?
no,
That was the one going around second, or going around first.
this one basically, you draw a throw, but the natural instincts is a throw, and she hit the runner like most of the time that we did that. We did that in a championship game against Dallas Escobedo. Remember that?
Wow. So think of that early in your career, when a coach did something to you on the field, ran a defensive play that you were ready, taught you something. I mean, it's happened to all of us. I just described Bill Smith, showing us something on a first and third play. Can you think back of any instances where you were coaching and somebody did something out there, you're like, God, darn it?
This guy from, he did, but there was a guy from up north. He's still coaching right now. Big black guy that,
African American.
I'm sorry. Believe me,
You're fine.
Anyway, he was probably one of the best base running coaches in defending that time. This was
a little overly confident guy.
Yeah,
and sometimes Don Ford with this.
That's it.
Yeah,
that's the guy.
He's a very, very knowledgeable guy.
Sting.
Don, I'm sure you're listening.
No,
but,
Our
Strike
strike force.
did the funky left-handed,
Yeah.
like Vicky Galindo, had his definitely own style.
Oh, yeah.
But smart guy.
He created more situations that, and I can't even remember a lot what they were, but I just remember.
Yeah.
This guy was totally outcoached that game. Totally outcoached. I felt it was like a helpless feeling.
Yeah.
I didn't know how to respond.
It doesn't feel good when it's being done to you.
No.
Sure.
Wait around, it'll
Did he do
happen.
anything? Any plays somebody did on you, or?
In '96, Camarillo did a fake bunt steal on us, and that's kind of where I got it from.
Was that one of the first times you saw that?
That's where we got beat in '96 on a big bunt steal when our catcher threw the ball down the line.
Who won CIF that year?
I think Modern Day. Modern Day?
That's who we beat the finals.
You let me right in with that one.
And I think Pacifica won like the 97, 98, 99.
Division 2, yeah.
Did you guys ever score off each other? Or
Yeah,
each
each
other?
one.
Oh, I hated Doug.
Oh, yeah.
I hated
Was it not so cordial back then?
No,
No?
I hated Doug. 'Cause Doug
We
was-
even had a
because
game
Doug
where
was successful. You always hate the guys that are successful.
we had a game when 97 when Tia Bollinger had a no-hitter until extra innings.
Found Valley tournament.
What's the name? Matt Freak got a home run against us.
One of those games, Jody Schicker hit a home run to left field. I remember because it was on the OCN highlights.
Jody Schicker, I can probably remember one home run that she. Not that I
Was Amanda's over the left fielder's head?
Yeah,
Yeah.
way over
That's what I
there.
was thinking.
Yeah.
That's what
It was
it is.
Amanda. I don't know why I'm seeing Jody
There was no
Schicker.
fence there, right? She ran. That was.
Oh yeah, that was one of those 300
Yeah.
foot fences or whatever.
Kept rolling.
Yeah.
When when the game is over, you replay a lot of things in your mind after the game? Talk to the team briefly, what's your post-game regimen with the team, and then on yourself, we're going to lead to that car ride home for coaches. Players get it.
Well, right now, I don't get that, I don't have that opportunity, but,
Do you like to debrief after games?
I like to, but I don't want to beat them up over things. I think it's more
Not
about,
scolding.
yeah, especially if we got another game right away, we got to play in a tournament. And basically you want to try to, if it's something really important, we'll talk about it. But basically we got to get back into, and basically to me, probably the hardest thing to do in sports, and I definitely don't have a cure for it, is losing a game in a tournament, a big tournament like a national championship, and having to come back right away within like one game break and having to play the next game.
Yeah.
That is really, and basically probably being positive.
Yeah.
So it's.
Don always says the toughest game to win is first one out of the loser's bracket. As soon as you drop one. Rob's style is a little more not so much the post-game talk, but you like to cover that stuff mostly during the game and
I think, as soon as it happens, I think that it needs to be addressed, and I like to talk to players. After games, I think less is better, because kids just don't want to sit there and listen to you because you just got done getting beat, and to me, I think it just goes in one ear out the other for most kids.
But you've only lost like twice in your life, haven't you?
So anyway.
Now, when we brought him over here, it's
Okay.
happened more.
Okay. I think like
We had games tougher to work with. Well, but that's part of that. Go ahead, Don.
You know what I used to do is I agree with you, is after a loss, I never liked to berate the team, or my team.
Yeah, berating stuff.
Because, or just continually talk about all the negative stuff. Because they're in a bad frame of mind anyway, and it's just that gets going through.
Especially
If I had some things that I really had on my mind that I wanted to pound home, I did it after a win.
Yeah.
Everybody's in a much better frame of mind, and
better receptive.
it gets received much better. Yeah.
I believe you can talk about disciplinary things after a win because we're not taking this so personal.
Yes.
But like this weekend, we had an example of losing a game, and it was the perfect time to talk about how certain things kind of fit in, whether it was preparation or some other things. Because for the really competitive kids, when it burns them more, Don calls it the burn in the belly. When the burn in the belly is more berating, I think I would that fine line between debriefing with passionately debriefing or berating your team. I think that's the biggest mistake that all coaches make when it's really about you and you're venting.
Right.
And you're like I say, the rhetorical questions during the game, what are we doing, and all those different types of things. I mean, that's probably the biggest fault that coaches have, is using that post-game time and it becomes their personal therapy time. I definitely have learned a lot of things, but to me, I've always went by feedback. I've since Rob and I have been working together, I had one of his alumni tell us, this has been great because you get the rub your nose in it in the middle of the game when it happens, and then you get the understanding of it afterwards. And so really you can either take both of them, or maybe one of them registers you, maybe the other one doesn't, or whatever it is. But that's the kind of the synergy that I enjoy with some of these different partnerships that we have, because we do have different approaches. And it's respecting that as well.
What are some of your pet peeves that drive you, after a game that really tick you off?
The first one that pops in my head is paying attention.
Okay.
Were you paying attention? I think John could testify. He could tell me differently, but I'm fine with the acceptance of the outcome of the game. I obsess over how we play it, and I obsess
Or missed
over our
signs.
attention. I'm always using analogies like driving. If you fall asleep half a second, boom, you're dead. So every second, I've always expected so much more from our players mentally to know what's going on, because I think that's when your awareness level is high, you make better decisions. You observe things. So I think number one for me, not paying attention.
How about you?
I would probably say accountability, making the kids, being accountable for the loss, and understanding it.
What about
And making excuses. I just making excuses for a loss is to me, it's not acceptable.
what about kids that can't get butts down?
And you busted down?
Bunts down
Oh.
Well,
we had that scenario, this weekend.
It's a good point to talk about.
I mean, we had runner on first and second, towards late in the game. The number 4 or 5 hitter, or number 5 or 6 hitter up. Asked for her to get the bunt down because we had, a kid that saw the ball pretty well her first at bat. And the first pitch comes down, she squats down, and obviously, that quality team is going to throw a rise ball in that situation, and she stands up and pops the ball up to the catcher, and stuff like that is.
And what we've seen all too, I mean, we see this over and over, and it's a kind of an, awareness. Did you know, what were you thinking they were thinking was gonna happen? But I think also that goes into preparation, which again, on my end of this deal, this team hasn't got into the repetitions that prepare for that high stress bunting, because I think in bunting, look, you get a pitch down the middle, a nice little Judy curveball over the middle, and you can do anything you want with it, right? You can push it past people, you can do all types of things, but when you're facing the nastiest pitchers, you guys tell me what you think about this, when you're facing the nastiest pitchers, and you gotta get that runner down, and even if you have an offensive style that doesn't bunt a lot over the year, but you know the critical importance of this at bat, and you got a nasty pitcher, all you want is a bunt fair territory. You want to try to get it because a nasty pitcher has exploding curveballs, a jumping rise ball, a jumping screwball, so any kind of funky bat angle, and they're pulling that bat back at all towards the first base dugout for right-handers, you're getting foul balls up in the air. We tell our first baseman on the rise ball, don't worry about crashing in, worry about that pop-up towards the fence. So don't come in so hard that you can't go back and get that pop-up that goes a little bit over your left shoulder, because that's really common. I think being able to do it over and over and over, and I want coaches to know that, look, it doesn't take a pitching machine or live practice full speed. You can really do a bunting station and slow down. Pre-game warm-ups, another pet peeve. A mile a minute, wiffle balls,
Right.
bunt. Coach is throwing from 15 feet as hard as they can on bunt practice. Just pepper it and let the kid, but I like them to come back to their stance and then go back and bunt and then come back to your stance, not stand there and just bunt 10 balls in a row, because they don't have to reposition, because we know if we get a kid and we throw an exploding curveball and she comes around like this and that bat's not out here, that curveball just takes her bat outside and it's foul ball, strike 1, strike 2. So
one thing that you did right there that to me is so important in bunting is you keep your head on the ball. You got so many people that, I mean, how many people really, on their batting lessons, they even work on bunting?
I think it should be part of your routine.
Unless you're like
we do routines where it's like one bunt, if you're gonna do a fake bunt, maybe a hit and run, jump bounce with a runner on third, and then 4 swings, but always try to incorporate it. I would suggest incorporate it into just one of your routines. We call it like a 1-1-5 or a 1-5. Lefties will do a 1-1-3, a bunt, a slap, and then 3 swings. If you make it part of your regiment, I think this is important to talk about too, because that typical batting experience for so many people, whether it's lesson format, which we're not going over a lot of skills a lot of times, or it's mechanical stuff, but find a place where you can just work on your function, because what do you need? It hasn't been interesting to learn as you work as a batting coach, what do you look for as a batting coach, but then what do you look for as a third base coach? I'd always want to tell a third base coach, look man, you don't care about what her swing looks like, you need to know that that kid can hit the ball on the ground to the right side with that runner on third, and how many times have you been in the third base box and go, this kid's dead? They're going to throw her off speed away, and she's going to pull the ball to third base or shortstop like she's got no shot. She's anxious, And so that level of function to me in the batting cage is really important.
One thing that I struggle with too is if I have a kid that should be bunting in this situation, and I see her on her first pitch, and here's her bunting. She's her style is so jacked up. There's no way she's ever gonna. So immediately you go away from that and try to do something else.
Why not? You call time out and get somebody on the bench that can bunt.
That's a good idea too, but it might not be the right side.
Wait, remember you were talking about the story with Bill Bruder? Kid missed a bunt on the first pitch.
Yeah.
He subbed her.
Yeah.
Second kid he subbed in, missed the bunt. He subbed her, put the third kid in with 1 strike left, and then had her bunt. You remember you told us a story like the first or second podcast, and then had her bunt 2 and she was out or something like that. But it was just like I tell coaches, try this reverse psychology. Because you tend to get pretty heated and angry when the kid pops up a bunt in a big situation, and then again, a lot of guys will turn towards the dugout like, "What are we doing?" Or towards the batter. I say just look the other way when she fouled it off, and act like you didn't notice it happened. Because Coach Norm used to say, "I can hear your ass slam shut a mile away." So that kid's going to get really nervous real fast when she fouls the butt off, and any little reaction that we give her. So I said, just look the other way, and I'm like, "What happened? What?" We'll lay this next button down. It's just kind of trying to get him relaxed. That's a pretty stressful moment that, would you agree, isn't prepared for enough?
I totally agree with that. I also, what he just said too, I think is important, is you should, my idea of developing a roster is you want to be able to win games different ways, okay? But you should also have roles that kids that might not start, but could come off the bench, whether it's a base runner, have somebody that's a really good runner. I don't care if they can do anything else. Know that they can get that ball down against the nastiest pitchers, and it's a process, and you're working on this long of it,
Right.
and make them feel important about it too. I think it's one of my things. When a kid gets down a good bunt, people on the bench and teams should let her know.
Sure.
You're a team player.
It's acknowledgement, sure, and in both ways. And when can you get to the point to where you're acknowledging a good approach without the right outcome?
Mhm.
So a kid might have executed or done something, but we had a tough situation. Kid hit into a double play later in the game with us, but I mean, really what I liked was her tenacity in that bat, and she hit the crud out of the ball, and she hit an atom ball. It was right at the shortstop. She made a great play and doubled her kid off, but for letting her swing in the at bat, what she did, she didn't get the result, but gosh, to downplay the result, really I liked the enablement that she had. So, all right, we're getting close to wrapping up because time goes by fast. I had asked Rob earlier what the car ride home is like. So when you hit the car on the way home, what tends to go through your mind? Turn on the music, a little Frank Sinatra, you talk radio, check your stocks, think about the game.
Well, I think of a woman sometimes.
Think of your woman.
Yeah, well,
Well, that's good. You think of your wife. That's excellent.
yeah.
That's understandable. And then you replay the game much, or you've got that competitive burn.
I'm burning, but I don't play it over. I just, the thing that really makes me angry is how you lose, not
Yeah.
so much that you lost. And when you have a runners, for instance, at third base repeatedly with less than 2 outs, and your batter didn't do the things they needed to do to try to get that run. It just kills me. If it's a powerful hitter that you got up there, and they know you don't want her to get the ball in the air because she's gonna get it deep enough to score that run. So the batter should know that. They don't want me to get the ball in the air. So what is my option? Right?
Right.
Okay, they throw me down and away. Well, then I can get the ball to
To the right side.
the right side on the ground. But these are the things. That's what bothers me, is how you lose the game when you've had opportunities to win that game and just didn't do the right things.
And I think by enabling the batter's function and give you more options instead of, hey, here's her swing, here's how she hits. But I'm thinking of Leni Correa. So in Oklahoma in 2007, we got bases loaded, winning run on third, and she's
Power
the
hitter.
California home run record at that time. And other team calls timeout, and so I bring Leni over and I said, hey, what's your approach in this at bat? She goes, well, you said bouncers win championships, and who I got from Kerry Crouch, and I said, yeah. I go, but Leni, you're the home run record holder. I go, wouldn't a nice line drive off the wall just be a great way to win this game right here? And she literally looked at me like, why are you doing this? Like, what do you mean? Like, you really asking me to swing? And I started laughing. I said, what's going to be funny? What's funny is that, look, I go, we got about 25 people in the stands here. You two teams are going to be facing each other in the World Series someday with 20,000 people in these stands. And I think that it was a year or two later, Arizona and UCLA squared off, and most of these kids were in the national championship game in the College World Series. So she goes up, hits a little dribbler, the least gratifying hit up the middle, and it ended up working out for us. But to know that you can go up there and do that, as opposed to watching a kid that's crippled in her ability, and then you just know that she's done. So, how about you, Doug, in the car on the way home?
I'd be lying if I told you that what you guys just said. But I basically I think a lot, especially if it was a game that something that I could control. I'm concerned about whether I took a pitcher out too soon or didn't take one out. I'll think about things that I, mentally I should have called or didn't call, or I should have sent this girl or didn't send her. And just little things like that. And then and once that's
Critical
over, I
of
don't.
information, but not overly self-critical.
No, I don't dwell about
Beat
these
yourself
things,
up.
but this is what goes into my head after a game. I try to analyze the game and see if there's different things. That's after we lost, okay?
Because you don't get where you guys have been without having that, again, that burn in that belly. So you have to, I'd like to think over time from when you started coaching to now, it's a little more balanced to that.
Yeah, just think about the batting order too. If it's, what about moving this kid to this spot? Is that going to create a little bit more? Because one thing I've always liked to do with the lineup is to have not only the front part, but the end of the lineup. And so you can turn over that lineup again and do, be
We like the 1 through 9 pressure. I mean, I think that's important, to not have any lulls where you can let anybody on the other side kind of regroup and re-energize a little bit. What's the biggest difference between your coaching days now and when you first started, would you say, you as a coach?
I'm a lot more controlled. I don't get quite as upset about things as I used to. When I would react to individual situations, overreact sometimes instead of just letting the thing play out. I have more confidence in, if a kid got behind in the count immediately, I would start worrying about, well, we got the wrong pitcher in there. Now, understand that.
Play out a little bit more.
One thing that always impressed me about one of the things that you when you call pitches, the game that you played against, the last time you won nationals for the A's, were you playing Tony's team?
Mike. Their last one was Mike, right?
No, I played that much first.
But how your pitcher from Florida, she was bouncing that off-speed pitch at the beginning of the game, and you stuck with it. Where you get a lot of coaches, they don't see that instant gratification. They're going to go away, well, she doesn't have this pitch. And
I think even at Florida, she used a lot of strikeouts with that off.
exactly, and at the end of the game,
We
that
can do a
was the
whole
difference.
podcast on that. We'll come back and we'll do pitching on another one because
Right.
that's utilization of pitches and the changeup. We don't get going on that. Like that's but that's a good point. Rob, what would you say on the car ride home? You mentioned earlier you basically like to turn the page. What's next? Think about.
Yeah, I just sometimes just think about what I could have done a little bit better to to maybe generate some runs, but also I also think about what I need to do at practice to prepare him a little bit more.
Good point.
To be able to win these close games if we've lost. So I don't hang on to things too long. I usually just think about it for a couple minutes and maybe stop at Starbucks and spend my $5 gift card that I get for Christmas or something.
Oh my God, so good. Thank you. What's the biggest difference between what's the stop. Last question.
You got
last
$7.
Hold on. Get in here. Last question. The biggest difference between you at the beginning of your coaching days and now?
Definitely maturity. I mean, I used to every little single call that went against us, I was always barking on it for 6-8 pitches. I just let things go now, and a lot of times just let things play.
How can we accelerate that for coaches that are watching when they're only in their 5th and 8th year? And they got 8 years, they got a lot of experience now, but between everyone in here, there's about 150 years. So what's the advice? How can we fast forward that for other coaches, or can we? And that's just something you have to learn and mature on your own.
Well, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say one thing is I think anytime you can go out and watch college games and you see how they act, like watch third baseman that's constantly, the third base coach that's constantly talking to their hitters, and I mean going crazy over everything, trying to teach them how to get to hit the ball in the middle of it, which is ridiculous if you think about it. But the other thing that it does, it takes you away from very important parts of the game. I mean, if you do that, you can't pay attention to see from that center fielder is shifting over real quick on an off-speed pitch or coming in,
Right.
or
Sure.
where they're lining up
Sure.
on certain plays. You're able to make adjustments. You're able to steal that runner on first base if you see something real quickly.
Sure.
Or get a pitch or something like that, so.
So there's hope for these coaches out there that are, because once you're in this culture, you get kind of addicted, right? So there's a lot of people, there's more 20-year coaches now. There weren't a lot when I first came in, so in early 90s, I know the game had been around close to 20, but there weren't a lot of 20-year coaches, and
Right.
softball was still kind of, but nowadays, you go to talk to a group of coaches and you have them raise their hand, and there's so many of them that put that time in, and I just want to see them evolve. I want to see their experience be worth it. Beating yourself up, your wife or spouse or whoever's next to you on Sunday asking you why you do this, I don't think that should be, you don't just sign up for that stuff.
Right.
And the last thing is that, I thank you guys for talking in here because I'm trying to raise the standard for everyone. The responsibility is on us right now with the scholarships, with the money. I mean, softball is really a business-driven sport right now, and it's a beautiful thing that's happening. But between, I can't have this podcast in here without saying, okay, so we'll start with this question of national championship games, championship games, CIF and travel ball. So how many championship games?
16.
16. Do the math in your head. How many have you been in?
14.
And how many have you won?
9.
12.
12.
It's-
Beat that.
I'm a
We're not
loser.
even at the I was thinking it like that, but
I learned it.
again.
I learned to get that second place trophy pretty well.
Well, hey, we'll do it. We've mastered that, so we wrote the master's book on that. So we can talk about that. But that's really what I want everyone to understand too, is that the reference from this, nothing here was rocket science. But if you take some of this, and gosh, if you want to be something, look at somebing that somebody that has what you don't, and copy that. So good luck and copy as much of this as you can, and we're going to turn the cameras off so we can talk about the good stuff. All right. Thanks, guys.